These videos are about regular people talking about the things that divide us, immigration, race, Trump, etc., so they might offend you. But I hope they're useful, like some videos I made about home repairs that helped thousands of people. You see, I hate doing my own home repairs. I don't want to listen to a professional home repair guy who makes it look easy. TV pundits give me the same vibe. I don't want to listen to these people. When you see them on TV, they're at work. It's their job to talk about this stuff. They're not really interested in learning from each other and fixing the problem. They sure don't ask the questions I would ask. So me and my brother, who is himself progressive, we drove to 22 cities and interviewed dozens of people who support progressive causes. And I learned this. It's our feelings that divide us. Feelings driven by personality. Some of us want to be the innovators, the trusting, the idealists. Some of us want to be the managers, the cautious, the realists. And each of us builds a fortress around our feelings that you can't break through with facts and arguments. But maybe we shouldn't try. Apparently, evolution or God or whatever made us this way for a purpose. I think that purpose is that we need each other to get the full picture. I know it works that way with other things, but we have to talk to each other. If we don't talk to each other, we won't make progress. We drove down to Los Angeles to meet with Andre Urena, an entrepreneur who has unrivaled credentials in working with immigrants to America. He's currently head of Latino strategic partnerships for Uulala, creators of an app for the Latin market that makes it cheaper and easier to send remittances abroad. He's also involved in training Latino entrepreneurs how to better serve their communities in immigration issues. And he is the trade commissioner for Costa Rican goods and services in the Southwest through Procomer, Costa Rica's commerce agency. We asked him how is he involved in the immigration system.
I didn't think 3 years ago that I would end up doing work in immigration, because let me tell you, it's not fun. I was born in Costa Rica, and there's a lot of red tape in the Latin American countries, and it's kind of like the same thing with immigration, but it's not only here, it's just all throughout the world.
Okay, and what kind of services do you do?
What I do in immigration is I realized that as an insurance agent in the Latino communities long ago, an insurance agent is not only an insurance agent. They bring mail to your office that they don't understand, so they want to make sure, if it looks official, that they are doing the right thing by them and by their families, and so they go seek their insurance agent or maybe their income tax preparer. And I've worked all throughout my life in the insurance community. I have a lot of friends in that business, and so they asked me to start helping them in the broken immigration system. And the more I got involved, the more I realized, hey, maybe I'm here for a reason, and to help people do this more effectively, do this more ethically, and do this more professionally.
Okay, and if I understand it correctly, you don't yourself work with the folks who are immigrating. You're working as somebody who facilitates the people who help them?
We train and educate people how to do it ethically. In the state of California, it's called an immigration consultant, and it's not a license, it's a designation that you gave from the Secretary of State of California, and for that you post a $100,000 bond, and you go through a background check, and once that's done, then you are able to help people with immigration paperwork and translation. You just can't give them any legal advice. Legal advice must be given only by an immigration attorney.
Okay, and what is it you're trying to do to improve what was happening before you started doing your training?
Well, what happens is that, take a place, for example, like Miami. In Miami, if you drive through the immigrant communities, you will see a lot of signage that says immigration services here, right? But if you walk into, I say, 90% of those places, the people that are doing it have never had any formal training. And this is not like selling insurance. This is not like doing immigration paperwork. You actually affect people's lives, and not only them, but their kids, more importantly. And I found the necessity to really help in this regard.
Okay, and you, how did you come to know that this was your calling? You told me earlier about kind of an experience you had that really drove you in this way. Can you explain?
Yeah, well, I'm Catholic. Might not be your every Sunday kind of church-going Catholic, as most of us are not. However, what happened is I was coming back from my house in Mexico. I have a house in Rosarito, Mexico, which is right about 25 minutes over the border with San Isidro and San Diego County. I was going literally from my house in Rosarito to my house in LA, and I had lost my green card, and I had a little paper, and so it was a single entry, not multiple entry, which I had already used. So I knew I was going to get out, and for the first time I ended up being on secondary inspection in their cell for a little while. And while I was on my way to the cell, I was surprised by the amount of baby formula there was, as well on the other side there was a lot of Pampers, an excessive amount. And I just kind of wondered and went into the men's cell. As we passed, there was a little window on the side in which I could see inside, and there was children and mothers. And I found that kind of odd that many kids were in there. So I just went in, and I was in a cell about 60 degrees. They keep it so as I learned later, it's so you don't pass germs. And it was maybe designed for about 65 people, and there was close to 95 or so in there. So it's kind of crowded. And as I walked in, there was people from different countries, primarily Latin America, but I distinctly remember there were some people from Africa there. So to pass the time, I started talking to a lot of them. I've been blessed with the ability to speak to most Latin Americans. See, most people don't understand that there's so many countries and so many subcultures within Latin America. So as I was listening to these stories and listening to all these people talk, I realized that they're not there because they want to. There was some there that a guy that I thought he was Japanese or Korean when I first saw him. So it turns out he was Mexican from Tijuana, and he was so happy being in there. He was laughing, and first I thought maybe he's taking something or he might be drunk, but he wasn't. He was happy, and the reason why he was happy, as I started talking to him one-on-one, was because he actually just made it through the border and he could live another day. And I'm like, what do you mean you could live another day? He's like, yeah, well, for the last 3 weeks I've been hiding underneath my mom's bed in her apartment in Tijuana, because if I don't die through the narcos, I die through the cops. They're all in one and the same. He goes, and they're both after me, so therefore I just ran in here. He goes, I hope they send me to Texas, that way I get to live another 2-3 weeks. He goes, so I'm elated that I made it and that I'm in here. He goes, at least I'll get to know when I eat. Mm-hmm. I get to meet people like you. Mm-hmm. I get to have conversations. I get to live another day. That was just one of the conversations. Mm-hmm. Many others reflected upon why they came. Mm-hmm. And as I was talking distinctly to this man from Puebla, in Spanish, and he was telling me how he was disappointed with himself that he actually came north, but that the need to help his children was so strong, and that he could not look at his kids in the eye ever and say, hey, I didn't try. And he goes, and as he's talking to me, right as he's talking to me, then I hear what I dread the most, and the reason why immigration became my calling. Every hour or every 2 hours you would hear kids cry, when in the cell next door, where mother and children are, Child Protection Services comes and take the children away. And so the children cry hysterically as they're being pulled away from their mothers, and the mothers go crazy in there, so much so that we could hear in the cell next door. And the man, the spouse, if they are in the cell, they go absolutely nuts in a space that is very small, where everybody's frightened because their future is so uncertain. So it becomes very chaotic. As I'm speaking to this guy from Puebla, he hears his children. I distinctly remember because I looked at him in the eyes, and his eyes completely changed and his demeanor completely changed. And then I hear his wife. And then he's directly in front of me and looking at me, and I'm thinking he's gonna go nuts. And he actually said to me, he goes, I hear you've been talking to other people here saying that you know how to pray. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, start praying. Let's do a rosary now. And I couldn't say no. And I started praying a rosary with him. And when that happened is when my life changed. That's when I realized that I was put in that place by God to facilitate as much as I possibly can with any effort of immigration, because at the end of the day, it's not about their parents. We're all parents and we all make mistakes because we're all humans, but it's about the children for me. It's about those children that now, as they are torn apart from their parents, they have a life ahead that can be generational of going down or staying the same and not going up. And so to me, that those are opportunities lost, and those are things that can contribute to wherever they live, wherever their feet are. Those are going to be strong supporters of society, strong contributors to society. And so because of that, at that moment, it became very clear to me what I was supposed to do.
So now that you've been involved in this, kind of what, take the story from there, and now that you're helping to facilitate better advisors, immigration advisors.
Consultants.
Yeah, consultants. What are kind of the success stories, and are there still horror stories?
Oh, there is. What happens is you end up watching a lot of Univision or Telemundo. Those are the two primary channels that they watch. Anytime that immigration comes up in news, in those networks, what they tell people is, be very, very afraid. Go to non-for-profits or go to an immigration attorney. What happens in reality is differently. What happens is they're not going to go to necessarily to a non-for-profit, because most of them are run poorly, and they still kind of charge them, anyway. So they might gravitate towards going to an immigration attorney, but the attorney is so expensive, and some of them are predatory. Therefore, they get intimidated by the attorney, and they know it's going to cost them a lot of money. So in the middle, the reality is they end up going to the person that has helped them in the past with paperwork. And that person is an income tax preparer or an insurance agent. That's the people that they have put their trust on for years. So in reality, they don't go to the non-for-profit. Some of them are too proud. They don't really need to pay or not to pay. They're too proud to go to non-for-profit, might be. Because in the Latino community, there's one thing is that we are proud and we're hard laborers, right? So, and we're smart people. So they might not want to go to non-for-profit. But the attorney might be too expensive. And as it turns out, not everybody needs an attorney. People that need an attorney are the people, what is it that Trump calls them? The bad hombres, right? So those are the people that really need to be able to figure out how do they fix their criminal before they can do anything, right? And so what we help is the people that need translations, the people that much rather have somebody else help them fill out the application. And all they do is they read them the same instructions that are readily available on USCIS website, right? And they charge them a modest fee to do those things. So those are the people that in California, at least there is a designation. And that's the state that has anything when it comes to that, those preparers, right? Other states like Florida, those places have there's no law, nothing. So therefore anybody can just put up a sign, say immigration services, and then they'll be taken advantage of, right? So that's the kind of the reality of the thing.
Okay, and following the story of like the children that you saw, that you had such empathy for, what was the outcome of that? For most of them, or for some of them in general?
The outcome is worse, because what happens actually is worse now than it was 3 years ago. The outcome is kids start floating around through the system. These are U.S. citizens for the most part, and if their parents who now are deported do decide, or they can somehow prove they're the kids and then get them through the system back to them, then now the kids are U.S. citizens. They are now in Tijuana. Have you heard of English as a second language classes in the United States?
Yeah.
There is no Spanish as a second language in Tijuana. My friend is actually working towards seeing how he can help put some of those classes in there, because these kids, they're neutral. They're U.S. citizens that now live in Mexico because they follow their parents, and they can't speak the language, nor do they understand how to work in that environment, right? And so you end up with a situation in which their chances are shot, right?
Okay.
And these are U.S. citizens, so
Okay.
it becomes a problem.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that you didn't see this as a business opportunity? You saw this as a, wow, somebody needs to help because people are really suffering. Is that
I
kind
saw
of how
I
you
saw
came
it
from?
as both. I do believe that at some point in life, in fact, I used to work with Lloyd's, which was the first insurance company in the world, and at one point that was a bar, right? And it was a bar in which ships would come in. And that's how insurance started in the modern world. But now, would you imagine buying insurance from an agent that has no license? No. So therefore, would you imagine doing your taxes with somebody that is not certified by the IRS? No.
Okay.
Would you get your paperwork, which whether you're conservative, liberal, or whatever you are, I'm somewhere in the middle, but where you couldn't go to somebody that is properly licensed to do the things that you must do because your children are here, your roots are here, you're not going anywhere. I'm not talking, and that's where people have a misconception about the great complexity about the immigration issues. I'm talking about the 12 million people that currently live in this country, and no matter who Trump is, and no matter who is here, they will not leave because they can't leave. They will not leave because it will be like throwing them to the wolves, and those wolves do exist.
And explain it. Explain what the problem is. Explain, first of all, who's coming here. I mean, are they the sons and daughters of the conquistadors and the descendants? Is
No.
it people who look European? Because there are a great number of people who look European in Mexico, right?
Right.
But those are not the ones coming here, right?
Well, no, it's not that.
Now, nobody wants to talk about that, but you, of all, you've told me how cosmopolitan you are and how well you know the society. Explain to me who's coming here and why they're coming here.
First of all, this is not a thing of indigenous people that come this way. It is about, I've spent a lot of time in Texas, in Austin, and San Antonio, and there's a lot of folks there that are Gonzales, Martinez, yet they don't speak a lick of Spanish except for tortillas. Therefore, you have a situation in which I don't believe that it is about the country that matters or the origin of your skin. There's there's a lot of white-skinned people that come to this country.
Oh, sure.
Undocumented.
I wasn't trying to make it sound like I was worried about the color of the skin. I'm trying to understand what are the forces that are making life difficult for them in where they are now. Because I think there's a lot of
misconceptions.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of dysfunction.
Of course.
In some of these countries, and
starting with the United States.
Well, sure, yeah, nobody's perfect, but
nobody is ever perfect. Yes.
Right, but I mean, if you're the police chief here in the U.S.
Yes, sir. Where in U.S.?
Oh, I don't know.
It's called the United States for a reason.
Yeah,
if you go to Alabama, brother,
right.
It's different than if you do it in Los Angeles. You live
well,
here in a bubble. We're the largest sanctuary city in the world.
Okay.
And I think even the mayor is very proud of it.
But let's talk real talk here.
Yeah.
There is a reason that people are not leaving Texas to go to Mexico. What are the reasons? You describe with tremendous compassion what's going on, and I want to hear that description.
Sure.
I think what we're doing to Mexicans by letting employers employ them.
Yeah.
It seems like there's certain political interests in those countries who are kind of glad and will even facilitate that kind of transit because maybe if it allows them to stay in power for another 100 years, there is no George Washington, there is no John Adams in Mexico right now. Maybe because there are safety valves in place.
But there was Simón Bolivar, and there was others.
Sure. Well, you would know the politics 100 times better than me.
Right.
And I'm just asking you to talk frankly about why people are coming here.
The reason why people come here are because, like I mentioned earlier, if a father cannot look at their son and guarantee their physical safety.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have a daughter. I could not fathom my daughter living permanently in my house in Rosarito, Mexico at 14. Exactly. Why? Because first, the public security for her would be an issue, being that she's young. The other thing would be the fact that you don't know. Actually, Mexicans are more afraid of the cops than they're afraid of the thief, and I've lived through it. And so that's me with being able to drive how I want. But when I go to Mexico, I used to go in a 1969 Volkswagen Beetle instead of an Escalade, right? Because the safety is an issue. Public safety is an issue. The other issue is there is no way for most people to be able to get a good enough education to be able to rise up. There's also the system is rigged for the 1%. You talk about the United States. We're very, very even in many ways, in ways that even Americans don't understand how good the American system is. That's what attracts bees to honey. The more nowadays that there's technology out there, more people know how does it look on the other side of the border, and therefore they want to give their kids a better future. That's the driving force. The driving force for others is much more immediate, and that one is, hey, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to get killed because I was a kid that had no opportunity, therefore I started doing bad things, and then I ended up bad. Or I'm a kid that wants to be a hero, I'm going to go work for the cops, and eventually I become part of the mob. So therefore, you have your future is very limited unless you are in the 1%. Okay. Those have a very good, nice family in other places.
I really appreciate you explaining it like that.
Yeah.
I worry a little when you say, those folks that they're coming here as not as economic refugees, but because their life is in danger. It almost, to me, it sounds like, gosh, that's not a guy I want moving to America. I don't know what they're going to be bringing. But how would you answer that kind of criticism?
But here's the thing. Have you not seen the news, whether they are, in your view or my view, fake news, real news, whichever news? Have you not seen the exodus, the mass exodus of people from places? This has been happening for years. The only reason why we see it in the news now more is because everybody has a phone, and a camera, and a voice. And people can twist things whichever way. But the constant flow of people throughout the world is constant, immediate, and because of all the different factors that are going on in the world today, those changes are inflicting upon us influxes of migration that to the amounts that we have never seen. Yet that broken system is even more broken than it can be. Okay. We haven't even started there, but
that gets to the core of, I guess, maybe a disagreement between conservatives and progressives. Is I look at that and I say, okay, the duty of the government is to provide security and well-being for its current citizenry. I agree. The stuff that folks in Latin America have to put up with is absolutely horrific. Right? I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
And unfortunately, what most American citizens end up seeing about Mexico or other countries is they see only the shiny side, the touristy side. But just take a neutral country for example. I've been to Jamaica, both to the real Jamaica and the sandals Jamaica. I much rather like the sandals Jamaica. However, I know there is a real Jamaica where people are suffering and all they can eat is chicken all day.
Well, you're right, and the humanitarian, nature in us is to try to do everything we can help. And if you take it to the nth degree and say, well, we've told the Jews in World War II you can't come here, right? There's refugees and then there's refugees. My concern is, and I don't see anybody addressing this except Trump, and I think this is why he won the election. It's like, hey, guys, what about us? What about our dreamers? What about the guy who works in construction now, who doesn't want competition from people who will work for $5 an hour?
But that's exactly the problem right there. It depends on what qualifiers you're saying. The people that have a construction business, most of them are Latino. And most of them are U.S. citizens. And most of them do have people that work for them that are more committed to working for them because they have no other alternative than other people. So therefore, the competition is going to happen, whether there is green people, pink people, red people. And at the end of the day, there is not one single conservative American that voted for Trump that can tell me that they're here because they were indigenous people. The only people that can claim that right are the original set of people from here.
But, using me as an example, my grandfather came over.
Awesome.
worked for 10 years before
Where
he
did
could
he
bring
come from?
from Italy, and
Okay.
then before he worked for I think 15 years before he could bring my father and my grandmother
Awesome.
over, and you know, as an 11-year-old, they actually moved into into an American neighborhood so that they wouldn't grow up with accents, because
Right. In the
they
50s, that's the way the kids were raised.
They
Don't
believed
become
very
American
much.
and
Yeah.
don't embrace your roots. And that we now find out to be the wrong approach to have for children.
The notion was to assimilate,
Right.
was to become
Assimilate.
American.
Correct.
And
But what is
you think
American
that was
then was not what America is today. Therefore, there is
Well, yeah,
a disconnect.
What you're saying, not what America is today.
Right.
Okay. Well, there were a lot of things about what America used to be that were very praiseworthy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and I wish that we had him today, like morality from our president.
Okay. Well, I would also wish we had lower unwed mother rate.
But that cannot happen because there's not enough education or health programs. So we can go on about this, but the evolution of humanity will continue. In the meantime, these kids keep on crying. In the meantime, these kids keep on not having an opportunity. In the meantime, the sacrifices that their parents made to get here are now taken in vain because Trump wants to build a wall which is impossible to build, and it's a wall that is mainly it's just to show a monument of what Trump did.
Well, I won't argue with you about that.
Thank you.
About whether a wall. I mean, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Okay, but I won't argue with you about
Right.
it, because we could just do that all day long.
Sure.
It sounds like you're saying there is no legitimate fear that whatever it is that we call the shared values of an American, you know, that we may be bringing in people that don't share those values.
No, actually, there's most of the families of Latin descent that have been living here for a decade or two, undocumented, they are more American than the Americans, than the typical American.
Well,
they are God-loving families. They're families that care about their children, have a better future. They're families that make sure that their children get up in the morning and get this done. And Trump, just by mere insulting those people and putting them in packages with felons, that in itself is not American. And America is born in a constitution, and that constitution respects the right of people. And when you have to respect the right of people, as the president, you have to be held up to the highest account. Therefore, how can you start trying to fix a problem when you are referring to your own citizens this way? What you think that all of us Latinos in the United States are not powerful, cannot work with each other, that we are somehow dumbed down, that we don't have the technology and the ability to be able to, or the resources, to be able to continue to rise and be a strong contributing part of this country. And you think that 12 million people can be kicked out of this country? And you think that if they were somehow magically being able to kick out, that the very essence of this economy wouldn't fall, that the Latinos are what make this country regardless. You think a kid at 18 or 19 is going to want to work inside a sweaty shop or want to go work in the back of a fancy restaurant where they get treated like crap? No, they won't put up with it. But a guy that treasures and appreciates the fact that he's in this country will do a great job. And their kids, he's going to force their kids to be better than him. And those kids are going to be contributing members of society. And that's the same thing the Italians did. That's the same thing the Irish did. It just happens to be that we live in 2017, and thank God we're going in 2018. And I truly believe that 2018 is a different year. And I can also respect enforcing what laws are in place now. But I also must understand and know there's 800,000 kids that on a whim of the president go one way or another. Oh, well, today we're safe. Oh, today we're not safe. And these are contributing children. These are children that work a lot of jobs, and these are children that are here, and we're providing some kind of assistance. 800,000 kids.
If you recall, it was President Obama that decided with a stroke of the pen, today they are safe.
It doesn't matter which president. Do you know that the President Reagan created the biggest amnesty? Yeah. And that is a safety valve that must be missed. Well, if it was a mistake, if you believe that to be a mistake, then...
Well, because there were promises made that were never kept when we did that.
Well, there's promises made that were never kept being made today by
but that's a bad thing, right?
Obama made.
That's not a good thing.
But it's not a bad thing or about a good thing. It's about that the systems are broken, and in the meantime, these kids keep on growing.
You're right. Latin Americans are on the ascendancy. They're powerful. I mean, nobody would argue in a million years they're not absolutely amazing workers, deeply religious, entrepreneurial, everything we would want in citizenry, right?
Right.
So you said like the Italians and the Irish and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The one thing, you would know this much, much better than I would know this, because you've lived in Latin America.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how women in a short skirt would be treated on a bus in
Trump's
public
bus?
No, well, in Trump's bus. Touche, good one. Well, but you know what they'd be treated like in South America if they got on a bus. It's not the way. It's not a shared value of Americans.
Depends where in Latin America, at what time, and where you're going.
Oh, very good point. As I said, you would know the subtleties of this much better, right?
Just like here. You want to get on a bus to Hollywood, we're close by. It will be the same thing.
But as part of Western civilization, not even just America, just Western civilization has shared values of, one man, one vote. It's not, the power isn't just the guy with the biggest guns.
Where is the power of the man with the biggest guns?
Well, I mean,
where are you referring to?
I guess I'm referring
You're referring to this idea of Latin America most people have, and that's where I want to enlighten you.
Okay.
There is places in Latin America that I am safer and feel more safe than anywhere else in the United States. There's places in the United States that I feel the same way. There's places that I feel in the United States that my life is at hand. There's places in Latin America as well. Depends on the money you make and who you know and how you live.
Okay.
That is true anywhere you live, actually, in the whole world.
But the getting back to your analogy, bringing it to the Italians and the Irish and everybody who'd come in waves.
The constant flux of humanity.
Yeah, right. No, nobody doubts that at all.
Yes, sir.
Nobody doubts the studies that you've quoted showing that people were Americanized within a couple of generations,
yes,
right?
Sir.
All of those studies are, they're studies that are long-term studies. We're in a place right now where we don't really have the melting pot. We have what people are calling the salad bowl, kind of a cultural mosaic. And children now are not encouraged to assimilate. They are encouraged to,
assimilating which way? Depends.
Well, see, you say why should
cultural?
we?
Is it about mathematics and science? Is it about culture? Is it about history? Is it about what sense?
It's about shared values.
And shared values by whom?
By Americans.
By which Americans?
By,
America is no longer just one thing. That was in the 50s.
That's what you're saying.
And you want to go back there? Let's make America better, not try to go backwards.
Well, I would like to go back to the unwed mother rate of the 50s.
Yeah, but then there would have to be more education and more people.
Yes, I would like to go back to the
in
educational standards of the 50s.
Yes, but then first you got to do that because they're not going anywhere. They're going to be here. The unwed mothers and the abortions and all that stuff is going to be here whether you live or not, whether it's outside or inside. These are, if you have children, you want the best for your children. You don't want things to be done in
the choices the government makes will affect how many unwed mothers there are. I mean, we've seen through the Great Society. So let's start
education and get these upcoming generations right. And this is not a short-term play. It's a long-term play. Well, there's no Band-Aids that you can put in these things.
I agree. So what
just makes it worse. The Band-Aids makes it worse.
But what worries me is that you're describing an ascendancy of Latin Americans who, by your own description, you don't think it's that important that they assimilate to what we would call, American values.
I think you're looking at it differently. It's not about us. What is your values? Who's the majority? There's no majorities anymore. People just gotta face that and embrace it and see what you can build with that. How beautiful it would be.
I don't want my daughters to have trouble on a public bus if they wear a short skirt.
Then don't let them go on vacation to anywhere.
But you're saying you don't mind if that becomes an American value.
It is already an American value. Here's what you don't understand. The great majority of people do not agree with this thing about, like, for example, I've spent a lot of time in the hills of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. So let's take it there. Most people there are white. Most everybody's beautiful. Yet on Sundays, only the men can drink in the bar, and the priest has more power than the mayor. The women, if they even walk on the sidewalk of the side in which the bar is, they're considered floozies, right? So this environment, and then the men are very macho there. What happens is that these women grew up in a false sense of the real world. All they have to do is drive down from the hill down to Guadalajara, and they're going to see those skirts, and they're going to be able to drink on that bar. There is everything wherever you choose. So if people think that somehow they're going to Disneyland their way around the United States, they can't.
Okay, so are you saying then that we as a country, we as a nation, don't have a choice of what our national character will be? That it will just be whatever the waves of immigration determine it to be?
No. Why would be the ways of immigration? The great core majority of people already immigrated, and they're already here, and there are certain values that we all agree with.
I know for a fact there are guys and men and women who grew up in what would, I guess you would call the kind of naive 50s.
Yes,
in a neighborhood where everybody did look like, you know, the folks in Leave It to Beaver.
Yes, sir.
And when we hearken back to that, I mean, we hearken back to that not because we say, hey, I liked it when blacks were disrespected and when, you know, you never saw Hispanics on TV. And,
okay,
you know,
but just right there, the moment you change
back to it.
Yeah, no, but the moment you change that, the moment that you want to have a world in the 50s without slaves or anything like that, the moment you upset the apple cart, the moment you give people more freedoms to be, that moment, when that moment happens, culture changes.
Yep.
And the moment that culture changes, you can't put it back. It's not like toothpaste, you can't put it back.
Oh, that's a very good point, but what I'm trying to say is that when people say we can make America great again,
Yeah.
okay, everybody understands what idiots we were with regard to race and the role of women and all that. Everybody understands how we...
Who's everybody?
Well, I would say the vast majority of Americans understand. I mean, when we're talking about make America great again, I mean, it's like, you know, the fact that the economy was doing so well, the fact that people had pensions, people had, there was not as much crime in the streets, there's not as many unwed mothers. That's what we're talking about. We realized that we were idiots when it came to race. And I think most Americans are beyond that. You know, the fact that we elected a black president twice is kind of evidence of that. But it sounds like to you that the character that we choose to have, you know, whatever we want to call the American character, is something that's always changing and something that's changing in a way that we really don't have any control over. Is that kind of where you're coming from on this?
Well, I believe that the platform of America is great again also includes the fact that coal somehow is going to miraculously grow again. I also believe that there is so many things about this America grow again, or America...
Make America great again.
Yeah, isn't it true that America is already great? I am grateful every morning. Even today, this morning, I was grateful to be in this country because it's a country
You're
of
a successful entrepreneur.
Well, I know a lot of people that are poor that sell tacos that are grateful to live in this country.
That's true.
Is our president grateful to live in this country?
I mean, we have an opioid epidemic. We have people who are out of work.
We have Russians coming in and doing stuff. Oh my God. We have all kinds of problems, and America is great when we work and work with Russia. Come on.
Well, we can argue details all day long.
Of course. Well, no, you were saying that the campaign of America Great Again includes all these beautiful things, but it also includes all these nasty, immoral things.
Well, yes, and I believe we, as the American character, you say it does change, and I do believe it does change.
Yeah.
You don't see the type of overt discrimination anymore, certainly not in the workforce. Maybe there's inherent discrimination.
Sure,
maybe we have a long
Thank God
way to
we're
go.
improving. Okay,
right.
So
when we say make America
we are
great
also
again,
at the highest rates of unemployment, and that cannot be something that we did in a year. It happened because of many years. So it's not even the presidents that influence that. Is the global economy. I'm the trade commissioner of Costa Rica. Don't you understand that these things I understand?
Yeah.
Don't you understand that there is other people that don't understand these things? Therefore, they can easily be coerced into believing in a red hat and these ideals that things that can be moved back without moving climate change, without moving economies, without moving technology. You can't put it back.
Yeah, well,
can't put it back.
Well, we did take a direct turn towards a more global economy back at the beginning of the first George Bush administration.
Yeah.
So when
by
you
no
say you
choice.
can't put the toothpaste back in the tube,
Correct.
we can change how we do our
I agree with some of
our
I
trade
agree
deals.
I agree with some of those trade deals need to be changed, but that doesn't mean that
Okay.
America is not thriving. America's been thriving for years. Yet the America Make America Great Again is based on fear, fear of the undocumented, fear of this, fear of that. How about hope? How about all of us working together? How about finding in the differences that we have common humanity?
I'm
and how
glad-
about giving a care about our children
I'm
and
glad
where
you-
they're going to grow?
I'm really glad you asked me how about hope and
Cool.
how about fear, because when we decided that we were going to go to a global economy, even the very strongest defenders,
who's we?
George W. Bush.
No,
Well,
nobody
when-
decides.
Okay.
In that part, when it comes to global trends, nobody decides. It's the forces of global trade that
Well,
make it happen.
let me
and then
restate it.
the politics come here and put a little rainbow on it and do rainbow cuttings.
You would know better than I would, because
I
you are
know.
an international businessman. But when academics started defending a global economy, even the best defenders said there will be local pain when factories close, when people relocate, but it would be offset by the overall lower prices. Now, I feel like what you've said so far, we're great, we continue to be great. I disagree. There are huge geographical areas in this country that have suffered and suffered terribly.
Mhm.
And no one seems to represent them except Trump. So
No,
that's why
I don't think a billionaire that avoids taxes every opportunity he gets, I don't think that he can represent them
he was the first
well.
one to bring these types of things up at debates.
I know
you can
golden
ding him for his
children. I
personal-
know golden children that live in gold cages, and those children's skewed view of life is not who should be running the most powerful country in this. But he got elected.
Well, why
Hey,
doesn't
and
why
we
doesn't
gotta live
anybody-
with it. Let's go back to what I can do. I can help in immigration. Let's go back to what I do. I can help people with moving money through the world without having to pay the banks.
And
I
I'm
mean,
just
that kind of
trying.
stuff.
I'm just trying to understand. In your opinion, then, the work you're doing is moving us in a direction
Of
that
positivity.
that is positive, because first of all, you're relieving human suffering,
Yes.
which is very admirable.
Yes.
But you also believe that the whatever we would call the American character. I mean, you demonstrated so admirably that you know how to do the American dream, and you believe in it, and it's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
But you also are saying to me, it sounds like you're saying to me that the American dream, or the American psyche, or whatever you want to call it, the American character, is something that's largely going to be determined by whoever comes here. And it's okay with you.
No,
if
it's
people
by who
come
is here.
Okay, who is here? Well,
And that includes the little percentage that comes in.
okay. Well, do
Whichever rate that
now
is.
you say little percentage. Do
It's
you
a
not
very
think? Do you think it is not a legitimate fear for Americans to think that that the character of the American people will be changed by large groups of migrants who do not share our values?
What if you asked me that question when I was 100 years ago and I was an Indian? Same thing would happen, man.
Well,
Same
you
question that
you
you
make a
would
good point. We did change their culture
Life
for
keeps on
sure.
changing.
Yeah.
And unless we embrace change, then we are against change. And if we are against change
Okay.
happens
Yeah.
because something sparks it, and it has to happen.
Yeah.
If we just cover ourselves and build a wall, and we just do that,
I think
the Great Wall of China can be seen from the. What does it
You
do?
have such a unique perspective on this. As a man who grew up in Costa Rica, who has been to so many countries, and you could do and work just about anywhere you want, and you would build your reality around you. You understand you're an exceptional man who has those options. Most of the people I grew up with are not exceptional men. They don't have those options. And they look for their country to look after their interests.
They also look at their community leaders to help them through that. And the community leaders need to be able to have the ability to give people a leg up and not a leg down.
Mm-hmm.
And in the society that gets pushed by the red hat, I mean, it's also, I don't like the blue hat either, right?
Mm-hmm.
All I want is for people that are here to be able to have the abilities that most of us take for granted, including most of Trump supporters. And they want a better life for themselves, their kids. Would you want to live a life in which, because you are very poor or because you're underserved, you have to pay $20 in the bank to the bank in fees a month? And that translates in like $300, $400 a year that you're paying a person that is making minimum wage. That's another big change that I'm doing, and it's called Uulala. It's an app that helps people be able to pay less money sending money home. Do you realize how much money gets sent home by Mexicans to Mexico? By last year at this time, and now we're in December, by this time there was $25 billion sent from U.S. Mexicans, let's call them, to Mexicans, right? You know how much money, because of the fear of that Trump has put in them, how much money is leaving this country? As of right now, last year $25 billion. Right now, $75 billion in remittances go from the United States to Mexico because they're afraid, right? And so, you know how much each remittance costs? $9 to $12 from Western Union. With our app, our users be able to do that from $2 to $3. We won't charge them for them to pay the bank $19 in fees. We will also give them discounts if they go to certain places. We will give them microcredits. We will help people, right? And that's just an app, and that's technology. And the only reason I'm using that analogy about technology is because technology can help, right? Technology is a way to evolve communities. So under the red hat, Tesla wouldn't exist, Uber wouldn't exist, all these things wouldn't exist, right? Because we want to do coal instead of solar power. We are, if I am those things that you say that I am, if I am that person that has been privileged enough to be in different environments and understand it from all sorts of points of view, if I am that person, I am that person that does believe that technology and evolution helps humanity, not degrades humanity. Yet, our president uses technology just to incite fear and poke at his opponents through Twitter and be immoral and not be an example for a child. Up to Obama's time, if I had a 10-year-old child and said, you want an example of what this country is all about? Look at your president. Now we can't do that. In fact, I've seen it with my own eyes with my 3-year-old nephew. They pull him away from watching what Trump is saying because they don't want those values. And that goes to the values. So at this moment, unfortunately, the conservative movement in this country finds itself at a very, very, very difficult pivot. Because is it that conservative America that we want to keep? And if so, we have the wrong leader. And that leader incites all the anger and frustrations from all those people that have, for the longest time, felt unrepresented throughout the Obama people. Yet Trump is a game host. Therefore, he's able to pull people. Like you say, I might be a little bit more enlightened than other people. But at the same time, I also know that if I wanted to just make money off of people, I could just appeal to their lowest common denominator. And that would be with Latinos, Chinese, pink, yellow, green, anybody. Right? So let's just hope to use technology for the better. Let's realize that the 405 freeway burning up alive is because we have maybe a little bit too much heat. Where is that coming from? You talk about me maybe have had a privileged life. I flew in a helicopter on top of an iceberg with my son in Alaska. And the guy that flies helicopters in Alaska every day, for people that can afford those trips, was telling us, hey, last year we had a little bit more of this ice. Now we're going to just land here and leave real quick because there's less ice. Quick picture and let's go. So these are realities. And technology is doing that in all these countries. It's helping in improving these countries. I know that firsthand. My country, Costa Rica, is 98% renewables when you flip the switch on the light. And only 2% comes from fossil. I don't think we even use coal. I don't think they know what coal is anymore, right? But I also know that in the mining areas where coal is, you could actually turn out other businesses there and invest that money and that effort into that. That is making America even greater, because America is great today. It has been then, and it will be. So.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time. That was Andre Urena in Los Angeles, who I can't thank enough for being so frank. This was an eye-opening view into the world of a truly global citizen. I hope you consider supporting this series by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks.